I got married in 1973. I remember the date, August 4th, 1973. Had lots of hopes and admiration. My beautiful wife and I, we had dreams. Unfortunately, shortly after we were married, my mother, who came with me from Egypt, was unwell. My wife says that the first year of our marriage, we spent more evenings in the hospital and ate more hospital meals than we ate in our own home. Shortly after this, after my mother passed away, I got involved into work more. I was beginning to travel a little bit. I had a change of jobs. Then came the kids with all the activities of the kids, and our life was busy. And then came more work responsibilities, and I was traveling a whole lot more. Oh, and at the same time, I accepted many roles in our church. I was the chairman of the missions committee. I was on the building committee. I was an elder in the church, and I was even teaching Sunday school. You can imagine what my life was like. And unfortunately, about that same time, our marriage began to suffer and struggle, and it was a whole lot easier to be involved with work and church ministry than to face the realities of raising kids and being a good husband. I don't know if some of you struggle with the same things. The objective of this coming short video is to help you to start to prioritize where you spend time. To learn, it's not a time management course, but it's a way to help you, give you a new principle. We call the principle of permanence, on how to prioritize your roles and your relationship in what we call the jar of life. Take time and listen with us, okay? So far, we have spent a significant amount of time discussing a formula to help you identify, articulate, and communicate your God-given strength. We also talked about the fact that your strength becomes revealed to the world as you fulfill God's purpose for your life, with dreams and visions that lead you to identifying clear, wonderful roles. And your life roles are your callings. Your callings have their impact as you collaborate with your important people and benefit your teachable people. We also talked that the issues of your life are the subject of your calling, And we encourage you to identify issues that make you say, I wish I could. I wish I could. Your Heavenly Father is engaged, involved in all of the issues of the world, and He's seeking your help and your partnership. With every issue, we encourage you to identify points of accountability, areas of accountability where you can focus your goals, because that's what drives your actions and your activities. Now, identifying roles has been the most problematic area that we have encountered as we served with people in this field of strength and the application of strength. So I'd like to drill a little deeper on this subject. Very often, when you are called to a job or a ministry, you're given a title. And unfortunately, titles are very misleading when it comes to prioritizing your life roles. So here is what I'd like to suggest to you, that you begin by focusing on your strength. One of the simplest and easiest way to describe your strength is using a set of adjectives. Just simple adjectives that describe the roles you want to play. Because adjectives describe how we play our roles. Adjectives describe how we do what we do. We always say, how we do what we do is more important than what we do. This is a bit of a tongue twister. Let me repeat it again. How we do what we do is more important than what we do. For this reason, always try to begin your conversation about a role with a set of adjectives. Out of that, you move to the areas of responsibility. The areas of responsibility is the place where you are accountable for results. The areas of responsibilities is the area where you are given empowerment and authority to act. Empowerment meaning you have the tools and the resources to get the work done. Authority means you have the permission to act. And my friend, responsibilities should always be assigned to one specific person. We say responsibilities assigned to many are seldom done by any, because it becomes diluted and you do not know who is supposed to be doing what. So always accept the you could have a responsibility assigned to more than one person, but there's always a primary person and somebody else who's helping. Once you have your responsibilities clearly defined, then you have SMART goals. Based on these SMART goals, you can build plans that are a collection of activities. And a plan can be simple. It starts with what needs to be done, who's going to do it, and when it's going to be done, with the view of achieving results. Your plans should always be reflected in your calendar. You see, there is no role without a responsibility. There is no responsibility without empowerment, equipment, resources to get the job done. There is no empowerment without authority. You could have all the tools, but if you don't have the permission and the freedom to act. There is no authority without accountability. Accountability is for the purpose of protecting you as a child of God. Accountability is having someone over you, watching over you, caring for you, protecting you from going off track. And there's no accountability without clear goals. No accountability without clear goals. You see, this all reflects on how we invest our time. You and I, when we stand before God on the last day, we're going to be accountable for only two things. Only two things. How we spend our money and how we spend our time. These are the only two things that we really can control. And a wise God is going to say, come and give me an accounting. How you spend your money and how you spend your time. I'd like to share with you a simple story. A story that you may have seen before. It's available on the internet and on YouTube in a variety of ways. I don't know who created it, but I'd like to share it with you in case you haven't seen it before. You see, you and I are all given a jar we call the jar of time. We all are given the same size jar, exactly the same, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And we are accountable for what we do with that jar. And unfortunately, over time, you start the week with an empty, all available time available to you. But over time, people come and pour in all the demands of their life into this jar. You open your email and comes more demands. People come asking you to help. And all the demands of life keep coming in and you lose control over what's available in that jar because the demands seem more urgent with every passing minute of the day. And then all of a sudden you feel that a big portion of your day is already filled. But unfortunately here we have what we call the big rocks of life. We have something we call planning. We have that all of these need to go in the jar by God's design. We have something called your family that needs to take some time. We have something that's called sleep that needs to go in here. We have something called the very important people in your life that you should be spending time with, and they need to go in the jar. Oh, and God himself desires some of your time so he can nourish you, build you up. And all of this is supposed to go in the jar, but there is not enough time in the jar. There's not enough time. And you say, I'm overloaded. Why? Why? God designed for you to have all the time for the things that he wants you to have. So what is it that you need to do? How can you fit all of these demands into a time that's already taken, into the jar that you cannot meet? Well, let me show you how you're supposed to manage your time. This is the most simple and most basic principle of time management. It's really very basic and very foundational. You see, God's design is that you start a little different. You start in a different way. You see, let me introduce you to the concept we call permanence. Permanence. The things that have longer permanence, that last longer, deserve the highest priority. And they need to go in the jar first. Things that have longer longevity and last longer go in the jar first. If you are a child of God, your relationship with God will last through eternity. Your time with Him goes in the jar first, because it's out of that quality of that relationship that you are strengthened, enriched to be all that you need to be according to His will and His plan for your life. Oh, by the way, you are a human being. Out of the strength of that body, out of the strength of your physical and mental abilities, you can serve everyone else. Sleep is important, so you need to take care of your body. I've got news for you. You're going to live with that body until they put you in a box. So you need to give yourself enough time to rest, exercise, eat well, sleep well. This is the desire of your Heavenly Father. Oh, maybe you have a family. If you're married, God's design is for you to stay with your spouse until they put one of you in a box. If you have children, God's design is for you to build them up until you push them out of the nest as independent human beings. So your children and your spouse goes in the jar after this. The important people in your life, they need to go in the jar as well, because that's part of your important relationship, the important people. And all the other plans and the activities that you have intended to do, they go in the jar after that. You see, what happens with all the demands of life? Once you've done this, you allow these to filter in and fill in the space, fill the available space that you can give them. And you can trust that they will take their space, because you can shake it up a little bit. And you know what? By God's design, the jar was well designed to fill in all the time and all the responsibilities God has given you. And you can close the jar and be fulfilled in what God has designed for you to do. It's a simple story, but I hope it sends you a message of how you manage your time. On our website, you can download a simple spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You can modify it any way you choose, but it's a time budgeting tool. You create it and you start your week by putting the big rocks first. All these important things we talked about, you put them in there. And then as the demands that come from other people, allow them to filter in and fill in the extra spaces. What are the big rocks of your life? What are the big rocks of your life? What are the big rocks that maybe you haven't been paying attention to? Is it your time with God? Is it your family? Is it your health? Now, my friend, I'd like you to come back and meet with Jesus. And if He asks you, where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your time? You know, I'm convinced that when we stand before God in the judgment day, He's going to hold us accountable for two things. The only two things that you and I can control: how we spend our money and how we spend our time. So how are you spending your time? You know, which of your roles do you need to redefine so you can give priority to the things that really are important? What changes do you need to make in the priorities of the jar of life? Supposing Jesus asks you one or more of these questions. Where do you spend your time? What roles do you need to redefine? What changes do you need to make to reflect the principle of permanence in your life and relationships? If Jesus asked you these, what would you say? Would you write down and tell Him? Now, as we have done in previous sessions, would you please sit down and reflect back on your notes or the video you watched? What's the most important thing you learned? You see, my friend, you cannot do everything. What's the most important thing you learned, and what do you want to do as a result of that? Would you take time to write a prayer to Jesus? Thank Him for the roles He called you to play. Ask Him to help you with the commitment you make to apply the thing that you learned and the change that you'd like to see happen. Over the coming weeks, would you take time to share the the illustration of the jar of life with someone. As a matter of fact, this illustration is not ours. It's been used by many people. And in your notes, we're going to provide you with a link. Go to YouTube and put the jar of life. You're going to find many, many illustrations of that principle. Take time to send it to some friends. You might challenge them to re-examine the priorities of their life. Share with them what you've learned. You might challenge them to possibly follow in your footsteps. God bless you as you continue the journey of blessing others and living your strength.